Hello everybody, welcome back to Wappelville. I'm going to try and do another live session here. We've got ourselves a creature caster figure again. We haven't done one of these in a while. You can see the reference pictures down in the lower left hand and right hand corners. Well, that's a previous one that I did, a live session from, month and a half, 2 months ago. So what we're going to try and do is actually get our chat thing going here. So just give me a second to Fortunately, I got to do the whole password thing and all this other stuff. So you can see that box starting to work its way in over here. And that's where I can, well, hopefully chit-chat with you guys. So first we're going to do our authorization thing here. It's always a pain in the butt trying to put these passwords in and such. But such is life. Alright, almost there. Now I'll be using the ProAcryl paints. I think, gee whiz, I think I had the transparents last time when I did. Yeah, I think I had some of the transparents. So we're going to try those again. This time, though, we've got some contrast paints. We didn't have that before. In fact, I'm pretty sure. Well, here we go. Good grief, we have Waleed in the house? All right, let's, there we go. I'm not sure why we have two of these. Let's see if we can get rid of this one. Here. There we go. Hey, Waleed. Oh, hey, Trevor. And hey, James. How's it going? It's James, not James V. James. It's James with James. So here we go. One last thing to eliminate. Hopefully. No, let's just do this the easy way here. Come on. 1 second. There. That's better. Now we'll bring you back. Now there's a couple of these that I still have to work on. This one is pretty neat right here. And then there's this one. 1 second. So kind of a bard type thing going on here. So this one might be, I think it's going to be more of a recorded session because I might need 2 episodes on this. Because there's a lot of stuff going on there. So, yep, many thanks to Waleed who hosted me for a super excellent game of Lord of the Rings. I hadn't played in 6-7 years or whatever. So yeah, Wally, here's one of the things that I still got to finish off. So there's the drummer. That's the war drum. That's what you'll be seeing more of. That's what gives him that extra sneaky 5 inches of movement on the cataphract calf there. So we got a couple of contrast paints. Actually, this one here, this Vulpes pink, I haven't used this very much. And I thought, well, what better thing to mess around with than something like this? Then we've got some of the old favorites here, especially Faded Ultramarine. A certain Nestor knows the power of the Faded Ultramarine. I got some purple here. Also some of the transparents. Let's see if we can... Here we go. Transparent purple. In many ways, these are they're a lot like the contrast paints. Thicker. Because look at this here on the palette. See that? I'm pointing to it now with the brush. There's the purple. See that kind of just stands on its own. Whereas, like here in these little containers, that's where I've got the pink, the Leviathan blue. I think we've got some wildwood over here too. Let's get started here now. This base, well, it's actually like a marble type creation here, and all of these things actually fit together in a big old sort of jigsaw. So what I will do is, let's see if we can't grab ourselves some of the wildwood here, get this going. Probably use a little bit of the snakebite leather. And actually, some more snakebite leather was kindly donated to the process. We were running real low on that, and all of a sudden, miraculously, along with a Sauron figure, we were resupplied miraculously with snakebite leather. So I just took a little bit of the Leviathan blue there. See, we're just going to set the stage here on our base. We'll be adding our lighter colors later. We'll be mixing colors with this. See, now we're going to just go more with the Leviathan blue over here. And then we're going to switch back more into a snakebite leather, like so. Now afternoon, so let's see. It's 2:26 here. Oh, is it 5 p.m. or 5:26 in Melbourne? No, it's 7:27 in Melbourne. Ah. I'm going to take actually a little bit of that transparent brown. So this is the ProAcryl right here. Some of the transparent brown. Actually, I should get one of my gloves on here. Let's see if I can find one that's a little less filled with paint, like this one here maybe. It's the lights just have a tendency to bounce off the skin, and it makes it hard to see the figure. So now we're going back to more of a Leviathan blue and wildwood style mix here. Tempted to put some Slaanesh style markings maybe on that. Well, I don't know if you want to call it a cloak or whatever this cloth is right here. Maybe something like that on that. Oh, that was a great game. Yeah, it felt like shooting at those beautiful minis. Well, let's see, how many times you shot at the horsey? Yeah, well, that defense 8 that's rough on a strength 2 bow. That's for sure. I figured you would kill a couple of the archers though. That was a weird archery duel. Actually, there was more like a weird Nerf gun archery duel because pretty much nobody hit anything. Except maybe Rich might have killed one or two things with his. I'm not sure. Oh, hey Aviad, how's it going? Oh, so Friday. If this is a key day for you, then I'll try and tag this or target this more often. Great to have you back. Now I think you actually might have been able to catch the that last one where I did the other creature caster figure. So here, let's just get some just real quick transparent brown on here. And you can see I'm using it very much like a contrast paint. Now these are resin figures here, and as you might imagine, they like this banner here. Maybe it's best if you're looking to actually use this in your games. Replace it with a brass rod or even a polystyrene tubing, which would flex, but not. You wouldn't have to worry about it snapping. Oh, that's actually Waleed. Oh yeah, I told Trevor all about our game. Well, it's been pretty crazy. The back-to-back conventions, we're not doing that ever again. That was just a wee bit too much. Now here we're grabbing some of that shyish. No, that's the Vulpus pink. I was wondering why that was so magenta. Man, that's kind of magenta for shyish purple. Actually, some exciting things. The first of the Ossiarch stuff just came in today. Now I'm going to take some Leviathan blue. I'll get this on screen for you. And now see, we'll let that go from sort of a magenta now to more of a blue. That's the thing I wish more people would kind of think about with the contrast paints and the other stuff. Let me just move a screen over here. I'm also going to increase the brightness a touch. There, that's better. That was definitely not fun. I really liked Gamehole Con, but having them back to back, that was just too much. There's still stuff that I technically haven't unpacked yet from the two conventions, so that was, yeah, we won't be doing something like that again. But the Ossiarchs, I've been trying to look at the battle tome to see what's an appropriate idea as far as a color scheme and fluff and that sort of thing. Alright, now what we want to do here, this is tough because we got so many things kind of competing with each other for space. We're going to start doing a little bit of blue here. So there's Leviathan blue, but we're also going to take some of the regular dark blue. This is some of the contrast medium here, and we're going to turn the regular ProAcryl blue into a sort of a de facto contrast paint. So, yeah, well, it says a purse fight with bows. It was the weirdest. That was the weirdest thing. I think now Gandalf, of course, he was playing for real. He was not messing around. He was just the heck with you guys. I'm just gonna take this on myself. And I thought he was. I thought he was actually. I just grabbed a little bit of the transparent purple here. He was mowing through those Harad. That's for sure. It was definitely two sides of the battlefield there. I just started to look at some of the photos from it and trying to kind of label those a bit and see how we can turn those into some kind of a battle report there. There's some crazy swirling battlefield stuff going on. Now again, as always with this, you have to sort of let it fly. You have to let it do its own thing. Now we are going to take some of our, that's some of the, again, ProAcryl, regular purple. We're mixing a little bit of the contrast medium in there. That now turns it into somewhat of a contrast paint. And we're just going to, for lack of a better term, a little bit of a blue to purple fade right here. Yeah, we're just trying to set some value here. Get rid of the primer, as always. Now the other interesting thing with that Sauron figure that I'm so excited about is that it's going to be the first time I try and do a recorded video or tutorial of any kind that involves a painted backdrop. So that's really going to be fun. Now watch this. You can see how some of the other paint actually just gets into the brush. That was kind of part of the plan. I know it looks super messy and all that, but look at this. I'm just drawing that darker color from the hoof up into the rest of the skin tone here. Now some of this you can't see. There's just no way you're going to be able to see that, so just give me a few seconds here to just slap that brush down in there. Get that done. Now the claw over here. Oh, let's go with some, actually a little bit of Leviathan blue, a touch of wildwood here to just sort of gray that down. The primer, as always, just Badger Steino Res. A little touch of the pink Steino Res, obviously. Now, banner time. Here, we'll just, you're going to see an awful lot of purple on this. And see how that kind of flexes just a wee bit? Yeah, that's even with a very gentle touch. So, that's why I'm suggesting that if this is going to be for a gaming piece or something like that, it's really not difficult. The hand is a typical type of hand right there. It'd be real easy to just saw that away, cut that away, snip it away, and replace it with some kind of brass rod, even a real thick paper clip, anything like that. Alright, so primer successfully wiped away. And this is where we start to maybe have some fun adding in stuff that's a little more opaque. And the ProAcryl, when you're using these have some really hefty opacity to them. And I mean real hefty opacity, which makes the transparency that much more interesting. But you could see mixing a little bit of the contrast medium in there, that gave us some interesting semi-translucent paint to play with. Now, looking at the skin tones on my other one, they had decent amount of blue. So you can see what we're doing, taking the faded ultramarine here. We're mixing it with some of our Vulpes pink that we started out with. Here, I'm going to make my window even bigger so I can actually maybe see easier what's going on. We'll just kind of do a little bit of wet into wet here, maybe. It's not essential. It just happens to work out that way with the timing. again, this is all, we're thinking in broad strokes here. The metals here, I think I'm going to try and do a little bit of actual gold on them. The other one didn't really have much in the way of metals. It was mostly skin and carapace and cloth and, well, stuff that wasn't bone. So I thought this one could be interesting to try and incorporate some of that. Got a little bit lighter on the skin tone than the other one because we also have things like the cloth here. Kind of helps maybe make that stand out a bit. And I always say you just have to be willing to let things be a little bit on the messy side. Now look, we're taking that same faded ultramarine and let's mess with our base a little bit. And get some lights in here. All the while just realizing that you've added a whole bunch of opacity to it. Just by virtue of that little bit of the ProAcryl. And that's again the regular ProAcryl. I guess in some ways, I always talk about with the oil painting, be aware of how thick your paint is because of the whole thick over thin and vice versa. This is about opacity. So yeah, it just only occurs to me now. It's something now I guess I'll have to be sure to mention, to talk about opacity more. Because it's a game that I didn't really play before because we weren't really using the contrast paints, and even when I used the Reaper clears, it was in a different way. We'd throw the clear inliners on there and then wipe away a lot of them with the sponges. Well, we're not doing that as much. Well, oh, hey, Bethany, how's it going? Actually, I'm going to scroll up to see if anybody... Okay. Well, he's got pictures that he's going to send. That'll be great, because you have that really nifty depth of field thing going on with your camera. And as I was looking at mine, definitely no depth of field magic on that thing. They're pictures, and they're workable with a little bit of Photoshop magic, but definitely they won't be the Ansel Adams of Battle Report pictures, that's for sure. Terrain. Yeah, I've got to build some Osgiliath terrain for us. Like kind of multi-story things. There was the armory. There was the one, what was the tower? There was sort of the cultural center. I guess the one that held the Palantir, or one of the Palantir. Got to do something like that. So here, that skull. Actually going to go let that be a little bit darker. And it's never too early to start messing around. So that's actually just some Cassandora yellow that we are going to mix here with just like a flesh tone type color. A little bit of transparent brown here. And we're just going to start to play a little bit with some of our, just mark some of this as being potentially gold here. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do that until I started to see this play out, and I said, yeah, let's play with some either golds or something that looks bronze. I think gold is always, you can't sort of go wrong with that. Because, hey, you know how much I love purple in my golds. Anybody that's watched the last, hey there, Evil Elvis, how's it going? Yeah, let's throw a little touch of gold on there even. So yeah, these are the early stages where things are just, well, they're just going to be messy. We always would tell people, well, we still tell them that for almost 85% of the process, it just looks like, oh my gosh. And then there's that last 15% that happens, and usually the reaction is, wait a minute, I blinked. What the heck just happened here? Which is amusing. It's always entertaining to get that reaction. But we just sort of wish that there would be something that it'd be easier for people to wrap their heads around this idea as I start to add a little bit of that elsewhere. Remember, I was at the first chapter in the book of Wappel. If color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. And this is where we start to do the everywhere. Start to move these colors around, and it's not always the obvious way. Well, we take this color, this red, and stick it over here, and that same red somewhere else. What I mean is, well, take that ultramarine, that faded ultramarine blue over here. We mixed it with this. We've been mixing it with all these other colors. That is essentially putting the same color everywhere. But it's not a super obvious everywhere. So it's a little, I don't know, maybe it's a little trick of words or something like that. But that is definitely the case. Now we can start to add in just some hints of lighter values in some places here. And as always, what do you not see out on the palette, especially at this stage? You do not see white or anything really close to it for that matter. Another thing to keep in mind is that we can still glaze over all this stuff. This is not a finite process of we put down something dark and then just layer light, light, light over the top of it. Sometimes it's both ways. Start in the middle, work towards the light, put some dark back in there, a little bit of light. It really does depend on the situation. Now with the skulls, as Trevor knows, we try not to get those too bleached. Oh, speaking of skulls and bones, yeah, Osiarchs. So, while reading what I was able to read of that battle tome, you're talking about an army that someone said, okay, here's Jim's old two kings. Let's write a whole new story based on what his Tomb King's fluff was, and then make a bunch of miniatures for it and see how he likes it. And yeah, that's definitely, it's rocking. I'm looking forward to messing around with that. I know I've got actually 3 different ideas for color schemes, to the point where I might actually have to do multiples of the same unit. So that'll all be mostly on the Patreon page in the form of the Army Painting Series. Yeah, the Army Painting Series, that's, when you sign up for that, you're in for a whole lot of videos. You got a lot of things to watch because you're talking about, oh gosh, what is it? Well over 230 hours now at this point, because we just started Series 15. Yeah, just started Series 15. That's the Lizardman Blood Bowl team. And Series 16, my Harad, that's about to start. And then Series 17 in all likelihood will be the first of the Osiarch series. Oh, and there's going to be a bunch. There's going to be a whole bunch of episodes on the Osiarchs. If I could have done videos at the time, now look at this. We're going to take some of the faded ultramarine, some of this basically light flesh tone here, mix those together. That's essentially a gray there. But yeah, it's got a little bit of pinkishness to it. That's how we keep that sort of color consistency going. And that notion of if a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. We sort of pick one color that lightens things. Now here's a quick little something with all of these craft brushes like this. If you use them a little while, it sort of unveils. See that little, there's a little bit of a loose hair at the end. After a little bit of paint usage, You kind of find out where that is, and then you can cut that off, and you're good to go. So we're just going to say maybe that is also armor. Now let's go back to, this is a little bit of a ultramarine blue, faded ultramarine blue, and wildwood. Oh, hey Reme, how's it going? Oh, and hey Will, and Gary, you are first Gary in the house again. Just working on one of these here, and I've actually got, well, let's see. There's a couple of other things that I think this guy might be the first Dark Sword live session here. He's got a big old cloak there, so I think we're going to try him. I might actually add some flaming something to the base so that we can also make it about object source lighting, because you can never have too much object source lighting, of course. So again, adding some more lights to the base in some areas here. Now the thing about the ProAcryls and that opacity, I can't do the usual little sneaky things that I do with the Reaper clears and liners. It's not the same. It's that opacity. So it calls for me doing some different things, and that's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. Now what I've got to also remember here is that I add a little bit more here to the base. Here's what I like about the nice big old craft brushes. We spread those things out. We can do some feathered brush strokes on there. What we will do is play with something like this. So let's take this is the transparent blue. That's some of the purple. Let's mess around with whatever this is. Oh, thanks, Remy. And I hope I am pronouncing that right. It's been a kind of a long day. Here we're going to grab some of this is our contrast medium mix, and look at this. So see, now we're doing a little bit of a, yeah, see, it's even got some more darks in there now. It's a little bit of a wet into wet. There's even some of the initial wash that's still in there, or glaze, whatever you want to call it. It's just in a name at this point. Let's hit some of the flip side of this just to get some color in there. The banner, or whatever the case may be. And this is another thing too. We always talk about, no death grip on the brush, because you got this going here. See where the hands are a little bit further back. It allows for a gentler brush stroke here. I can always just do it with 2 fingers here. I'm literally just holding the brush with these 2 fingers. Bethany, the base is actually from Creature Caster. When you look, oh, actually, let's see. Here, I'll take you to the website real. Now it takes a little bit of while to come up, so just give that a while here. There we go. So those bases that you see there, those are actually part of the miniature. So we'll scroll over to that one. It's actually part of the miniature. Now you don't have to use these bases, and the first one of these that I did, I made my own base for it using one of the Green Stuff World texture rollers, and that was real fun. But the whole idea of these, the bases that they made, is you would use those as almost like a puzzle piece. And once you had all of the figures together, you would notice that it formed and this is including the large scale figures, it would form this sort of temple floor design, which I thought was really nifty. Now we're going to actually, I'm going to try and get a little bit of the magenta in here now. So let's see, now it went from, yeah, there's some color in there, to, oh wow, now we're starting to really juice this up a bit. And as always, the larger brush allows for some, let's see, long sweeping brush strokes like this. And I can always see I have my other colors here that I can go into. Here, let's get some of that. There, some of our darker color there. We just let that sweep right down the side of that. You can even go into a little more of the magenta. That's the ProAcryl magenta right there. Now the last live session that I did, oh, Wally, it's too bad. I wish you could have seen that one live. You saw the figure live, that's for sure. The guy with the banner. I think that was much more in the way of those clear and liner paints from Reaper. And I started using those years ago, and I liked them. They were very flexible. I could do a lot of different things with them. So see, as we go, this is not any lighter here. This is really just more opaque, actually, the color that is going on here. And I think we talked about that even. I know where that was that was discussed on the wild chibi painting thing that was for the Patreon page, painting those chibi figures. Of course, I don't have them with me here to show you, but you can look on my Instagram. I've been meaning to actually put the Instagram address in that little box where they got the Patreon address there. At some point, I'll do that. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did on the cloak. And what I'm actually going to do is try and support the banner here. So the banner is actually touching my hand, which is why now it's not going to flex quite so much. You see the end of the banner here starts to get some of that magenta color, which lightens it up. There. And we can go lighter with this too. This is just a straight up magenta right here. I haven't added anything that's lighter to it. I could add a little bit of that flesh tone in there. Now if I add some of the faded ultramarine, it will lighten it up, but also dull it down. I'm going to flip this over here. We'll get this side. And again, see the long sweeping brush strokes. I think in every episode that I do, I try and talk about the difference between spotter brushes and liners and rounds and everything else. Well, if you have a little tiny spotter brush, and we'll just bring that out here, and that's fine for doing the detail things, but it's hard to get a long, heavy brush stroke with that. Now, well, let's watch the replays before we played. It's going to be interesting once we start to add a video element to the battle reports. Then we can really start to kind of get some post-game analysis too. That's always fun. I always like that in battle reports, where you talk about what you had tried to do, what you thought was going to happen, and then what didn't happen, where dice didn't exactly cooperate. So here we added a little bit of the faded ultramarine to our magenta. Let's see, that point is, it's a big brush. Yes, I realize that, but the point is not that much bigger than that little spotter. But unlike the spotter, look at this. I can just, how many times have I had to go back to the palette, besides none, to be able to just keep going with these brush strokes, and that is very helpful. It takes less time, yeah, in the end, but it also means you have more opportunities potentially to do some of the wet blending because maybe the paint stays wet a little longer. It's a little easier to get smooth blends sometimes because it's just a brushstroke as opposed to a whole bunch of little pinprick brushstrokes. Say that 10 times fast. We're going to flip over to this side now. So you see the other element to this where I just don't let myself get bogged down into one area. We did some on the cloth. We moved on. We did some on the metals. We moved on. We're doing some up here. We move on. Speaking of moving on, we're moving on to some ultramarine blue. This is the transparent blue. And I'm just looking to get a little differentiation there. It's not going to stay that blue, but we wanted to have something there that's a little different now. Speaking of blue, the hair that's really more like tentacles, let's mess around with that because we have not done anything with that yet. We need to see what it is we want to do with all this. Because there's really no hair, it's just sort of tentacles. Don't want them all to be the same blue either. You also have a little bit of, for lack of a better term, jewelry running through there. Now there's, in effect, kind of a helmet on this figure here, so we'll get some golds on that too now that I see it. So in all of this, just sort of building in. Yeah, now, okay, we got all of this purple here. That's great, whatever. But we need to do something opposite of that. So this is where we're going to take some blue here. And in our folds, let's see if we can do this. Bam, right there. See how we put that blue in that fold there? We're going to do that on a couple of areas here. It's something I like to do in the folds. Like say we got a green cloak, I'll actually use a deep red. And I mean a real deep burgundy or something that's dark reddish brown, and that'll be that shadow color, which sounds crazy, but actually, believe it or not, when people look at it, they just say, wow, that's a really neat shadow color in your green cloak. It doesn't register in their minds as red. They just see it as a really interesting dark instead of, oh, look, it's darker green. Yay. The eye can get bored in a big hurry. And when people's eyes get bored, that means they're going to look elsewhere for something that's more interesting. So one way to sort of hang on to a captive audience is always just give them something interesting to look at. Speaking of which, let's grab some of this again here. And we'll just throw something there to remind me that should be maybe something more gold. Let's throw some more of this here. It's almost a bit like a scorpion helmet here in a way. And we're just kind of letting the de facto gold color almost work its way up into the metal of the blade, if we want to call it that. So I'm just playing around here. I got to see, what do we want to do with this? Is this going to be something that we would consider armor, or is it going to be something that is part of the skin tone? Speaking of which, let's find ourselves some lighter skin tones here. We got the faded ultramarine. And again, since it's nowhere near white, and I'm also going to be doing some little bit of glazing in there too. Yeah, so now this, that'll help us separate a little bit from our cloth, but we still want to get a little bit of the purple in there. So I said, again, this is some of the contrast that Vulpes pink slash faded ultramarine blue mix. Probably going to do the spots along the arm. That's something I do a lot on the Demonette style figures. I'm pretty sure we did that on that original figure. And yeah, that's the one that's down in the references in the corners there. This new format, oh yeah, well, Lee, this is definitely a different format. You haven't really seen this one live. It makes it easier for me to see the screen, except my reference pictures are definitely smaller. That is the one bummer about that. I wish they could be larger, but something had to give, and we just figured, okay, I'll make the reference pictures a little bit smaller. I'm going to go back to the basic. I haven't even cleaned the brush or anything. Just going to grab some stuff here, and we're going to let that brush do more of a filbert thing. You cannot do that. You can't do that with those little tiny spotter brushes, that's for sure. And I can still do some glazes onto this. Heck, I still got some green to work into here. We'll be doing that real soon here. In fact, right about now. So we got ourselves basically something that's yellow, something that's blue, yellow and blue. We're going to make us a green. And if that's too intense of a green, we just grab some brown here and tone that down. And once again, this is not even going to register as green. It's just going to look like a different type of gray. I can even put some of that up in here. Oh, and look at this. It's going to go in to some of the areas where there's gold, because you know how much I love green and purple in my golds. Let's just keep this going. Color goes somewhere, must go everywhere, and this is sort of a riotous version of that, but hey, we're even going to throw some of that onto the helmet. We'll just refer to it as a helmet. It's really more of a headdress, I suppose. Oh, look at that. Some of it just went into the claw there. Trying not to go too far beyond what are essentially midtones. I know these look like lights here, but oh, they are definitely not light in any way, shape, or form. Even this that I just added to the rock there, still pretty much a midtone at this stage. Still pretty much a midtone. Oh, thanks, Aerox Minis. Much appreciated. I'm glad that it's easier for, well, other people besides me to see also. Because what it does is it actually puts this part where I'm actually painting the miniature, it puts it up in a, as far as where the monitor is, at least where the monitor is right now, in a spot easier for me to see. It also allowed me to get rid of the fade that I normally have to use, and sometimes that restricts the overall view of what people can see. So that was kind of fun. Actually, there's areas, the camera is actually picking up more of my palette area, painting area, but it doesn't show here because it's literally cut off by the frame. So before, that all had to be cut off by basically using that fade, which would sometimes cut off things I didn't want to have cut off. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, we're working in our green. Let's lighten that up even more here. So again, we're using essentially a skin tone to lighten up that green, which would actually, I mean, this would make some really nice just regular skin tones. as far as just, typical skin that I paint. So now we got some warmer color. We got purples in there. We've got all kinds of different colors. Even in our skulls here, we'll get a little bit of greens into those. So when I'm painting those Ossiarchs, that's why I'm trying to come up with a few different color schemes, because what I was hoping to do was do a version of them, I don't know if you want to call it a more classic sense, where the bone is just, well, it's like painted like bones, but maybe use oils for that. And because I love doing my oils, but for my, what would you call it, my resurrected Tomb Kings, to try and keep with that, the tainted of Susanes there, what I'd like to do is actually have their bones look like they've been almost like electroplated with some form of metal. So it's the texture, I would guess, is bone, but the surface is actually metal. It's been coated with metal, and that could lead to me, that could lead to some really interesting lights and darks and midtones and reflected colors, because, well, you know me, and I like to have glowing things. Okay, at this point, I am gonna work in just a couple of things here. So, what is this, golden brown here? So we'll work in some of this. It's another ProAcryl color here. What I want is something that has some yellow to it, but also a touch of opacity. And then this is golden yellow here. I'm gonna work this in. I'll just pop that in over here, like so. Find myself a little room. But we've got our transparent brown here. Look at this, really nifty. Yeah. So see, it's a bit warmer, more intense than what we had, but still semi-translucent. Let's start to work that into some of these golds here. But I like having my green in there already. That's very nice. And once again, none of this is the lightest color by any stretch of the imagination. I guess another question people ask is, oh, wait a minute, we have a question by Engineered to Draw. How are the Blood Bowl team Necrons coming along? What scale green stuff rulers do you use? Tend to use the 28 mil. I think they sent me one of the larger format ones, and I guess that's okay for terrain, or I do have some large scale figures, so I might use it for that. The Necrons, actually I just fixed the arm on this guy, so I'm going to be filming this episode, well, episode 4 of that series tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Friday? And then over the weekend, I'm going to do the first episode of the Lizard Man, as far as the color test figure goes. And like I told you guys as I was doing episode 1, the basing, it's a color test figure, but each lizard I want to paint in a different color scheme. So you're sort of getting 16 color test figures in one. So kind of like the entire thing is going to be a color test figure episode. All 5. Well, all 4. So now we're starting to add a little bit of this yellow here. Picking out a few areas of the... see, just a few areas. It's not... There's no white in there. And oh look, we're still using a Gigantor brush. And that'll be its official name. I thought I saw maybe a question pop up there. If I don't see him right away, I apologize for that. Here, let's drop in some of that gold there. But I have to be careful. Actually, you know what? Enough with just the yellow. we are going to mix that yellow and faded ultramarine, because we don't want to get, we want these looking like imperial fists. And you say, what the heck is with the blues and these golds here? What's the purpose for that? Well, we've got all this blue around it, right? We got the blue de facto tentacle here. How is that not influencing this gold? And gold is supposed to be super reflective. So we need to somehow work that in to our golds. Can always get in there and clean things up with the smaller brushes, but for now, yeah, we're gonna stick with the plan here. See, getting a little bit of green into there, a little bit of green into here, and we also talk about freehand and doing the freehand as early as possible. Let's see if we can work out some kind of freehand here on this cloth. Now, I believe what I want to do, so kind of the circle end here at this, and then our typical, let's just draw that here. I think we're looking for something like this. I'm going to try and do something like that on here. And you can see it starts out, it's not super evident, and we're just sort of sketching it out here. Doing this as kind of light a touch on this as possible. Now we're going to carry this over the fold here, like so, and then we'll have this, the open end, like you do, and then there. And this was another army painting series. We did the same thing, the freehand on this cloak. It started out very, very sketchy, and we just refined it, and we refined it, and we refined it. Oh, Lehman Russ has a question. The freehand shape looks like a, well, that's kind of this Slaanesh symbol, which is, that it's Slaanesh. Slaanesh happens. That's just how. Well, we're gonna actually put. I was actually thinking of maybe trying to put some kind of a face in there or whatever. And I'm thinking this will probably actually be gold, freehand. Here, let's get this settled up a little more. Get some, instead of just straight up lines here. And now we've got these spiky things here like this. Maybe that is something that we incorporate into this freehand design. So here's another potential spike here, another spike there, another spike there. And then we've got that face there. Let's see if we can't work in that face. Oh, actually, engineer to draw. Could you use anything to stop the Sculpey firm from sticking to the roller? The extra gray firm should never stick to the roller. That's the whole point of the extra firm. Using the roller guides helps a lot, just in so many ways, because it helps you get a nice even roll. So, and I know they're not super expensive, that's for sure. But I love the roller guides. They're really handy. Really handy. So see, one of the reasons why I try and get the freehand involved as early as possible, because people will say, oh, I don't want to do the freehand because I don't want to screw things up. I don't want to mess it up. So then they end up just not doing the freehand at all. because they spend a whole bunch of time painting this one surface, and well, naturally they don't want to have anything bad happen to all of that work, so they just never try it. And that's kind of a bummer, yeah, because freehand is always fun. Well, at least to me it is. Freehand and object source lighting. Really enjoy that. Now let's see if we can do something with our, something along the lines of a face in here. Again, it's all just being sketched in. You sort of sketch it in rough, and then you go in and you clean it up later. We can even do some other, let's do some other patterns in this. We can do some other surrounding squiggles here. That's where I was going wrong. Had some medium firm lying around. Yep, it's, you can't use the white. You can't use the, oh, what is the pink Sculpey? That is the Super Sculpey. That's it. Yeah, the Super Sculpey is a problem. Basically every other form of Sculpey except the gray extra firm. So see how we're just, I'm going to test out some of these little squiggles here, see how those work. And the nice thing is, by putting them in now, let's say I want to tone them down, I can do that with just a quick little glaze over the top of them. That's all it'll take, is just a quick little glaze to knock those down. If I feel like they're too bright and they're competing with the main freehand. So we haven't actually even shaded this stuff fully, but I did want to get, as soon as possible, something out here that would resemble a freehand design. Now the question is, how bright do we want to go with that? That might be about as bright as we want to go with some of the lights on that freehand. And then, okay, do I want to do something with the eyes? Are the eyes going to be glowing on this? I don't think so. And then there's also that notion of some kind of three-dimensionality to the freehand design. Now, again, one thing I don't have out here in any way, shape, or form is anything that is white. All by design. Because, I mean, look at that. That's nowhere near white, but look at how bright that looks on the surface already. And all of this, it starts to become a matter of how much refinement are you going to put into things. Now let's go back over to this, and now we will add something that's a little more towards white. This is the ProAcryl. This is ivory, bright ivory. Well, there we go. Put some of that over here. And I'm basically just thinning this with water. There's no fancy medium. I got the contrast medium out there, but we were using that more in the initial phases. So now we start to say, okay, what's going to be some of our light areas on this? If it's gold, what if we wanted to change it more to something that's copper or brass, or something that maybe has a patina on it? It's not too late to actually go in there and do something like that. Let's see what we've got here. There's some parts of this, again, that I am not sure. Are they really part of that headdress slash helmet? Or are they not? And we also need to think about some eyes on her here. Again, all it is still just blocking this in. There's nothing that is permanent whatsoever. So many things here are subject to change. Just going to work in, figure out what some of these little, again, this is reminding me a bit of the Ossiarch, the catapult, the crawler. Just a whole bunch of little legs on it. This is why I didn't want to get too wrapped up in the banner. I had to sort of pull myself away from that. Sometimes if you feel yourself being drawn into one area and you really haven't worked in others, like this big old claw thing here has not really had much done on it since the very beginning, it's important to think about that. There, we can leave that alone for now. We are gonna take some of this ivory. We gotta think about what's happening with our whatever the blade edges on this here. I think we gotta do some kind of interesting. It just can't be a standard old metal thing. We gotta do something interesting on that. So here, let's grab some of this green here, because we got that green that's kind of a nice foil to the purple. So we'll do a kind of an opposite fade here. Hey Oliver, how's it going? Yeah, thanks. This one, I've been itching for a long time to get to these. This is really the first chance that I've had. The conventions really created a lot of havoc with the painting schedule, to say the least. And finally, we have reached a point where there are no more conventions until Adepticon. Adepticon's going to be very different for me this year, because for the first time, and oh my gosh, has to be at least 5, now more like 6 or 7 years, I'm teaching regular classes again. I've always done the Geek Nation tours class that on Thursday. That's been what, 3 years of that now, I think, 2-3 years of that. But now, yeah, we're actually going to be doing regular classes again. Registration is December 6th, I think, for Adepticon. So when the web cart goes up, so do those classes. Now, after I mess around with these a little bit here, I've got to hit the hair, and then we actually start kind of thinking in reverse here. We have to start adding some darks again. And that'll be in the form of some glazes here and there. What I'm just sort of doing here is making some mental notes right along some of these spots here. Now, I've definitely got to get a few areas of light here. And all it is just a little notation to say, okay, that I think is where I want that one point of bright highlight to be, but then we'll transition that later. Skulls, here again, gotta avoid that temptation to go in there and make those the whole bleached bone look. Now we're going into some lighter stuff here. This is the faded ultramarine. A little touch of that ivory in there. You can see how it looked so light here. Oh, guess what? Really wasn't all that light, because now it starts to reveal that those were indeed middle tones that I was working with. And I'm going to use those over here on this claw. Claw's also going to get hit with some more glazes, make it a little bit darker. Here, let's get some of this. Yeah, because that's all yellowish gold there. That just, that wasn't really doing a whole bunch. And you can see here, again, that was just, all we have is the original glaze that I did. Well, that's no good. We want some more. stuff going on there. Let's get some of this green in there. And I hope it shows up. It's sometimes the angle that I have to hold the miniature at creates some weird lighting things, and it's a little hard to see maybe the color that's going on there. I apologize for that. Now, we were talking about the hair, making that somewhat lighter. So this is going to be, it's the Leviathan blue. We've lightened it up with the ivory. It's doing a couple of things. It's going to lighten it up, but it's also going to make it more opaque. And all I want to do is figure out, okay, where are, like, some of these need to be lighter. I was tempted to go into the faded ultramarine again, but I want to do something a little, have a different tint to this. Not just lighter, but also changing, oh, what would you call it? Changing the color temperature. It's subtle. Definitely subtle. But it's those little surprises that you give the viewer. Now let's make that a little less, what would we say, less toned down. See, look at the difference. Can I put that? Yeah, you can. Wow, you can really see those two showing up against each other. So we'll mix a little bit of that in. And the idea is here now, that's a more intense blue, more saturated, more pure. Whereas what we had been using up towards the top, well, that was more of a desaturated, kind of a grayed down blue. And there'll be more colors added in here. Like I said, I could spend 6, 8, 9, 12 hours on this thing and do all kinds of really nifty, subtle things. We only have so much time here. Speaking of time, it is time to work some of this blue into these gold areas here in the form of some kind of a glaze. So it's watered down a touch, and it looks almost like I'm adding a bit of a shadow there or some shading. So see how we're in the basically in where the crevices would be. Not so much down here because we don't have the same sort of reason to do that. But up here where we've got the hair colored to reflect in, or the tentacle here colored to reflect in there. Now let's go even lighter up here. I know sometimes I spin this around and it's like just doesn't look like anything because this is very much a left side, right side. It's not so much a front and back type miniature. Definitely is. And there's a challenge to this here. There's a lot of sweeping surfaces to think about. What I'm going to do is grab a touch of this purple here. See what we can manage on our freehand here and make some adjustments to that. Again, it's the reason why you do the freehand earlier or sooner rather than later. See, look, I can go after some of those swirly things and tone those down. I can even tone down my main freehand design itself so it's not showing up too much. But because it's so early in the process there, what's the difference? What difference does it make to knock it down a little bit? I'm going to take a little white, just a touch of white into that magenta there. Let's see what we want to do on this banner thing right here. I think we want to have we don't want it to just end up looking like it's pink. We want to have some other transitions in here too. But for now, I'm just looking to find a lighter color here. It's going to be in these shadow areas, and that's the shadows that are there is just that initial mix of that was the dark blue and the Vulpus purple contrast paint mix. Well, we've only been at this, maybe an hour tops. And we've already played around with a lot of different things on here. Lots of different things. Here's some more lights. How do we bring that in? Now let's do it on the other side real quick while we're thinking about it. I want to see if I can't work some of this in. On the golds maybe, some parts of the skin. We've got plenty of green and other stuff in the gold here. Let's see if we can't toss in a few of the pinks here. Yeah, there we go. Some more over here. And this is supposed to be, it should be reflective of what's there. So we got a sort of the blue here. Now we've got some pink working its way into the blade here. Let's see if we can't do the same thing on the other side. Right there. Skin tones. We will take some of the faded ultramarine here. Start to work in some, maybe some lighter areas here. Face. And as I've been trying to do in other areas too, we want to vary that. I also want to do some of that the spots essentially, and also have some, maybe the skin, I don't know. I was thinking about having the skin go sort of darker as it gets down towards the end of the arm. That's kind of a neat little classic thing that I like to do. Now this side of the face definitely needs to be, just trying to throw some lights in there real quick. Now again, there's some other areas here you just can't even see, so I'm sort of skipping those because you really can't see those. Now I'm going to go more towards the faded ultramarine here. Now I also have to remember, I had talked about it earlier, the Reaper clears and the liners, they let me do some things that just aren't possible with this. I can try to manipulate them in a similar way. I can take some of the contrast medium here and sort of take away some of the opacity of the ProAcryls, but it doesn't necessarily really, I don't know. That's why I do enjoy the clears and the liners, because I can do some of that really fun, semi-transparent, without having to actually thin down the paint at all with any kind of water or medium or anything. Actually, I really enjoy the ProAcryls for 2D art. If you look, I've got, and I don't think all of them are Patreon videos. Maybe they are, but they are, I like using it for 2D art on canvas. It's actually a really neat medium for that. Let's get some of that yellow ochre color here and figure out what we're going to do with this stuff. And we'll do some glazes on top of those too. I just want to mark that color real quick here. plus try and get some kind of lighter tones on these interior armor surfaces. Here I want to get some green for sure, where say the armor might be reflecting onto the ground slash marble there. Speaking of which, I'm going to go back to this, and this is a different type of green. It's almost a more of a bluish gray green. Like a teal green, I guess. It's Fruity Toots. How am I do it? Well, I was really, what was it, yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday I got to play a game of Lord of the Rings for the first time in at least 6 years, I would say. And that was really nice. I'd missed that game for a long time. And we had some gracious hosts. There was food, and it was nice to know that the rule system, there were some things that were kind of cleaned up on it, and that the Easterlings, they are back and they are better than ever. Oh my gosh, they are something to be reckoned with. And also, since that last live session, the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, the first few boxes have arrived. I've looked at the battle tome for some of the new ideas that I want to do, some possible color schemes, and oh yeah, there's a lot of really fun stuff I think that can be done with them. So those, amongst all the other stuff that I'm assembling more creature caster demons. I'm assembling Aeronautica miniatures, Mantic figures. There's so many figures being assembled. More Warcry figures. You name it, it's being assembled pretty much. So I'm glad that these skulls, we were able to keep those relatively dark here. I will throw a few suggestions of light onto those. But with the skulls, you really want those to almost be more of a blackened type of a thing. That's sort of what they do. They don't really, well, I guess in the desert they get bleached, but this is really not a desert environment, to say the least. And what now? And as far as Bethany asked with the base, and we talked about how it's actually from Creature Caster. I think there are some options. There's a few different bases. It's not like this one base only works with this one figure. I believe when you get these figures, there are some options. We are going to go, let's see if we can go one step even lighter with the bright blue here. See if that works. Oh, yeah, Fruity Toots. The Lord of the Rings is certainly a fun game, and was stoked when they brought it back. Yeah, man, I can't remember when I've been so surprised and slash delirious. That's when I heard that news. It was last summer, I think, when the Pelennor Fields box set came out, which was nifty because in one fell swoop I got my Army of the Dead back, and that was already an army painting series, and then now I have a Rohan army that's underway. That was series 9. Again, that's for the Patreon page there. My different army painting series. We're making this, see, we're trying to get a little touch lighter on some of these. Going to do the same here. we'll even try and go in with some glazes on those. And here's some of the blue now that works its way into our metals on that. Same here. Flip this around. Do some of that here. Well, if you don't have an army of the dead, how can you call yourself an gamer? Well, Waleed and actually Waleed and I both have our own army of the dead that we're working on. Actually, we both now have the King of the Dead and his heralds, so we'll be working on those. Yeah, the shield wall on the Easterling cavalry, that was very interesting. Now, speaking of future projects, I've to no avail. Well, you can get. No, actually, you can't. I haven't found an Easterling war priest yet mounted on horseback. So now maybe they re-released that. I don't know. They have been re-releasing some old things, but that's something where I think I'm just gonna have to get some plastic cataphracts and then convert those, which will be interesting because I have not done any sort of sculpting videos whatsoever except for sculpting of bases. So I think some of the first video of me sculpting something might just have to be me sculpting some Easterling characters that I need, which, hey, that's fun. And we all have to convert things sometimes to be able to make the stuff we need. So I thought that could be potentially a fun little lesson there. Here, so we're working in, again, some of that lighter color here. And then we can do some glazes over the top to darken things down. Now, I'm going to lighten up this just a bit to the top of our cloth here, which is not necessarily a banner. Sometimes I'm never really sure what something is, well, especially when it's something like this, which is definitely more of a fantasy style figure. I did get pretty used to doing the historical figs, and some of the other stuff that I've done it's practically historical. It's sort of semi-historical, and then you go into the pure fantasy of stuff like this and the war cry. That requires a little bit of gymnastics and thought process there. A sudden change. So we were talking about some glazes of things here. Let's just get some things that have a little bit of some water in them here. And start to darken some stuff down. There we go. And I'm trying to get it through as much of this as I can for you. Heck, even use your finger there. So you can see this is a little bit of, I don't know if it's time for palette sludge just yet, but it sort of has a bit of palette sludge in it. Now we are going to take some of that. That's the transparent brown over here. I mean, a little bit of the pink to water that down a bit, and let's do some few little glazes over the top of our gold here. See, we can even wipe some of that away. So this is what I meant about basically working back and forth a bit. making some things darker, doing some glazes on them, going back and forth. I am also going to do a bit of a glaze in here. So I'm going to grab some of the snakebite leather that's over here, what's kind of left of that, some of our yellow contrast there, and go into here, get me some darks. I mean, it is a shadow area after all. We will do the same here. We'll do the same here. What it also starts to do is it reveals a few more of the little fine shapes that maybe you just didn't notice before. We'll do some more of that on the headdress here. Also trying not to get basically the weapon ripped away by my palette camera, which is just inches away, in case you were wondering. Now let's find ourselves some more of the darker tones here. Let's throw in some even more intense darks. Just want to make sure you can at least see some of that. They're not outlines or anything like that. By no means are they an outline. Oh, the only thing I remember about the Lord of the Ring game, the Elrond was overpowered. Well, that is definitely something that's been taken care of now. Actually, there were some heroes that were just, nobody took them. What they did was your army formation now depends a lot on the heroes. The other thing too is you can't just use generic captains and have entire armies. Well, I guess you could, but it's much more difficult now to base entire armies around just a bunch of little captains. So that was kind of neat. So yeah, actually I do sort of like the idea of getting the arms a little bit darker there as they get down towards where the hand is. So this eye over here, you can't see it because the banner's sort of in the way. Just gonna work in a few more. Again, some more darks here, because we did a lot of middle tones. We did some even suggestion of lighter colors too. But now we need to get back into some serious darks. I guess we've got something that's sort of like gills here on the legs. I never really know exactly what things are supposed to be on some of this stuff, so I just kind of guess. So again, another one of these glazes here to just get some darks. This is what I mean about, yeah, see, and here we'll set up the same thing too. We got this water down here, and this, as we get some darks in there, will really start to bring out. By default, the golds start to show up more because what's behind it is much darker, so definitely much more contrast being built in. I'm also going to go back in with some of this brown here. now that we've kind of messed around with, here, let's get some of that down into there too. We're gonna take, we're gonna get some of that purple, a touch of the magenta into this. Now I'm gonna go back into some blue here. And the idea is just throw in a few glazes here. It's essentially like what we did on the other piece of cloth there, to just make the shadow area look a little more interesting. Just a little more blue. So we're taking even, wow, that's the clear, no, I almost said clear blue. It basically is like Reaper clear blue, but it's the transparent blue. And we're essentially making a little bit of a glaze out of that here. Just adding some water to it, and then we wipe some away. It makes the shadow area a little more interesting, that's for sure. And even on the headdress here, need to get a couple of darks in there, which, because of proximity to that dark blue tentacle here, well, that means some dark blues added into our gold shadow. Here's some little touch of the wildwood here on the claw, darken that down in a few key spots, but also basically another color that goes in there. Yeah, what the heck, we'll throw a little bit of our gold into that too. We'll flip this around. We're gonna hit that side with some of that. It's wildwood, but as a glaze, not as wildwood as a where we're just gonna slap this stuff on and do the thing that GW tells you to do. We're not doing that. We're not doing that kind of thing. That is not what we do. Not doing the conventional wisdom thing whatsoever. Now let's see if we can't get some back to the face and maybe get some lighter things going now that we've tried to indicate the eye here. So you can see this side of the face. So I'm going to maybe focus on it. I'm gonna be going at least another, oh gosh, 45 minutes here, I would think. And what I can always do is, when I'm working on another thing, I could just have this around, and if it's something I want to add some more, oh, what would you say, just a little more resolution in the area or something like that, I can always pick this up again and add some more things. I said the freehand here, this is all part of, see, it's kind of toning that down a bit, because we want it to be part of the banner but not overwhelm the figure itself. That was something that in the early days that would happen a lot on banners. They would be neat, yeah, and they would also just overpower the figure completely, which is not really the point. They're supposed to complement the figure, not just completely wipe it out. I'll go back over this way here, and I'm going to get some of that ivory back out here real quick. There. Doesn't take much. So that's mixed in with the Faded ultramarine blue. Let's get ourselves a few light tones here. Now it's interesting because I've got that, for lack of a better term, almost like like a spider leg or spider claw thing going on here on the side of the face. And so I guess we'll try and indicate that here. We'll grab some of our gold here. And there's one here, and another one here. I'm just not quite sure. It's almost like little scorpion legs or something like that. And I can actually get back to some of these because we've been able to get some more of the blues in there. Let's go back to some things on our gold over here. Again, just trying to pick out not just lighter areas, but I have to think we want that color variety too. It's not enough to just have yellow that gets lighter and lighter, because like I said, you'll just have something that looks like an imperial fist versus something that's supposed to be, say, shiny gold. There. And sometimes with these, I try not to, in advance, study these things. And okay, this is what this is, this is this. I try to actually leave there a little more of a voyage of discovery. Because if it's something that's super planned in advance, well, I don't know. To me, it doesn't necessarily help you as much because there's less problem solving that's going on. If you already know all of the answers to start with, you're not actively finding solutions as the process goes on. And to me, that's a little more valuable for you guys. It can make things a little more dicey and harrowing on this side. That's for sure. But I think it does give you guys some more info. So let's see if I can't just drop in a few little lights on the. There's these like little interior circles here. Now, let's see if I can't drop a highlight or two here. Let's see what we can do in this area now. Can you actually see? I guess you can see it. For a second there, I thought it's something you wouldn't be able to see. And there's once again another situation where, is that armor? What is that stuff? I guess on the flip side, it can be whatever the heck you want it to be. Here, we need, right at the apex of this, we need to get some light here. Like so. Okay. Now in here, this is where I gotta go back to my little gambit of green here, but also some purple. So We're down here in the interior, looking for some reflected light. Basically on the inside of this armor here. And even on this one out here, we're going to get some of that same green. There, but we don't want reflected light like this to be lighter than light that's actually being lit by a light source of some kind, whether it's ambient light or whatever. It's a tricky balance because you want to have it, that whole thing of you want to highlight everything like crazy. Well, you just can't. That's what we used to do in the beginning. We just kind of highlighted the snot out of everything. And realized, well, okay, in terms of just readable lights and darks, and yeah, it looks like it has shading, and the shading's not horrible or anything like that. But does it have that realism to it? Is it interesting shading? And a lot of times we have to say, well, maybe that's not the most interesting shading in the world. So now let's see if we can go a little bit lighter on the magenta and white together here, and on our banner, especially since this thing is, well, if the light source is from anywhere from above, this should be catching some serious light. It's closer to the light source than anything else on the miniature, apparently. So let's do that. Yeah, let's go over here. Some more lights over here. This definitely needs some light. It's just kind of devoid of any sort of light, but it's all magenta. I want to get some. We'll go in with that sort of bright blue here. See how bright we can actually make that. I don't want to necessarily wipe out the effect of the metals either, so that's a tricky little balance we got to match here. I'm going to go right in here with that. And if I say, that doesn't really work, I'm just going to go in here with my original thought and just take that out. Because as neat as I thought that was going to be, it just sort of takes away from what's supposed to be the metal colors, so we're going to change that back. I used to, in some of the videos, just intentionally set up something where I would, oh, geez, do you want to call it a mistake or whatever, but I know I did it with the oils a couple of times to show how easy it is to just basically take your finger, wipe the oils away, and start and put a whole new thing in its place in a couple of seconds. So there we go. And there's still a little hint of blue in there also. So it's not like it's completely gone. I'm just going to make sure over here. I'm going to look over at my chat thing and... Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Sometimes the chat just dies here. That hasn't happened. Oh gosh, in the last 4 or 5 sessions, thankfully. So we're starting to now, even on the skin tones here, starting to find some lights here. Let's get into this claw here. Let's get a little bit of a lighter, something lighter in a few places. When you do different companies' miniatures, you end up what one person's claw is another person's something else. It's sculptors just have different ways of going about the sculpting process, and when you bounce back and forth between different manufacturers, that can be a little challenging, to say the least. Because it's just like painting, every painter sort of has their own style, their own way they do something. Well, sculptors are the same way. So I'm going to say, you know what the heck, we're going to go with something that's more part of the gold here. Yeah, that's definitely not skin there. So bear with me while I do a little bit of a change here. Little touch of a change right along here. There. And we'll add some more reflected things to that. Also, I've got these crazy little interior things to try and bring up as well. It's almost like a little bird face on this end of it, which is interesting. So it's sort of like the tail of the scorpion becomes almost a bird head. Now, freehand wise, I'm going to actually add some darken out of the freehand. This is the transparent purple, that's from ProAcryl. Oh, I can keep asking you silly questions so you know the chat hasn't died. And Evil Elvis says he's only mostly dead. Now, this is the end of a super long day. For me, it's another one of those 18-hour specials or so. So my brain is definitely fried. It is definitely toast right now. So here. And I don't want to necessarily think of this as an outline here, but we are just going to get a little bit of it's a suggestion of an outline there on some of that freehand, but it does help sort of solidify the design a bit without having to continuously make it lighter. Same thing on this end here. Let's go another step maybe lighter here. So it's the faded ultramarine with some of the ivory in it. Again, I'm used to either with the oils or with the Reaper clears, just certain things that you can do that when you're using just the ProAcryls alone, it's stuff it's a technique or something like that, a possibility not available to you. That's pretty much why I use all manufacturers. I don't just say, oh, I'm using this one only. It's also another reason why I don't get complete entire sets of one miniature line, because I don't use, you can see we didn't use a whole bunch of colors here. Did we need that many? Did we really need a million different colors to be able to make golds and greens and purples and all kinds of different stuff? I don't know, is it more convenient maybe? Yeah, but not all of us have the money to buy the entire paint line of multiple companies. And some do, and hey, that's great. If you've got it, that's fine, but I'm thinking there's more that ain't than more that do. Oh, well, it's back. Start of a new day, yep. Been painting some Citadel Realm of Battle boards. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think I've ever had actually a chance to mess with one of those ever. Yeah, I don't think I ever have. So what we're doing here, see, we're just kind of doing the darker glaze on that. And then, let's just play around with those. We want to do those markings here. Let's get the Leviathan blue black. Blue black? Well, it is kind of a blue black, yeah. But I meant to say back out here. And the idea is to see what we can do with some little spots along the way here, maybe. Sort of those markings that you see. Let's vary the shape and size of these. And you can see they get a little bit smaller as you go along, and they'll even change the color on them here and there as we move along. It's another reason why I wasn't obsessing about the blends and stuff on the arms, because I knew I wanted to do maybe something like this. And we will once again do another glaze here. A glaze on this hand, because that can't be quite so light if we're going to have the other hand so dark. Speaking of some darks, let's get that on this blade here. How's about that? And Evil Elvis is slinging paint on a Cthulhu. There's a few. Oh gosh, there was one that did. It was a Cthulhu board game. It was one of those 200 to 400 hour versions, and that was had some really huge Cthulhu figures in it. It was almost like a map of the United States or something. So again, going in with some of that blue. That's the transparent blue with some of the ivory. And I'm actually going to get some blue on the fingers here. Little separation. Yeah, why not? What the heck? Maybe even a little more blue on the face here. Ah, I see I have to do a few little gold things on this side. Again, it's like it's the claws or whatever of the whatever that is that's on the headdress. And let's there. Need some dots of stuff. A couple of lighter things. I'm going to get back to some of that brighter green. So we got that blue there. Wow, this is going to be an intense green. Holy smokes. Wow, that's actually a little bit like almost like the jade color there. Let's knock that down just a bit. Yeah, there we go. Oh heck, I'll even let it mix with some of our initial marble color there. There we go. Because it was getting to be a little too much yellow in there. And then after we had done those little bit of glazes, all of a sudden it was just kind of a generic dark brown in the shadow areas. That's no fun. So let's get some green into this now again. Over here. So that, remember, it's got to go everywhere. So we are going to start finding some other places for it here. Oh, let's put some on the claw now. Some of that over here. What the heck? Maybe even on the hair in some places. Yeah, that's pretty helpful there. Because we don't want the hair to end up being too boring. Where it's only just blue. It's so predominantly blue that even adding this green here, very few people will look at it and say, oh, look, there's green there. I know I've mentioned it several times during the course of this. The other thing that when you add stuff like this green that I just did here, when you do have that orange going on with your golds and yellow, it will stand out that much more. Now we're going to go Leviathan blue here. Touch of the wildwood. Sort of like what we did in that very initial stage. See if we can't get ourselves a few. Yeah. Every so often you just have to stop yourself from adding a bunch of lights and actually then add in some darks. I think the instinct is to always just be adding lights all the time. Lighter, lighter, lighter. When sometimes a mid-tone or even some kind of shadow color is what's actually called for. And all the time on these things here, there could be hours and hours spent refining tiny areas, things that are almost impossible to either see on the live streams. Same thing goes on the Patreon videos. There's times where it's just, okay, you can't see this, or it would be a 7-hour video. Neither of which is an ideal situation, so there are times where I just do stuff off camera. But yeah, the only time I ever do things like voiceovers or whatever is if I've somehow had the microphone turned off. That happened once. Somehow my leg hit the microphone and hit the mute button, and I had to spend essentially 2 hours narrating a video that I was already talking in. Oh, hey, Bethany. Oh, okay, well, I will try and... Oh, what the heck is this? It's sort of maybe Sunday night or so. That's my time. That would be Monday... Geez, Monday evening, your time. I'll try and be back with one of these. So thanks again for joining. Yeah, we're going to get ourselves some... Speaking of highlights, now we're maybe wandering into highlight territory again. But because we've worked so hard in every area at once, simultaneously, now, if we do say, okay, let's really refine this one area, we're not going to pigeonhole ourselves quite as much as if we were doing that, like, say, an hour ago or 2 hours ago especially. We really don't want to get locked in like that. Yeah, I almost was gonna mess around with a color that's too light in this little bit of freehand here. Don't want to do that. Here, let's start to refine that. We darkened it down. Well, we made it a little more subtle. Now we're going to maybe bring it out a bit more. How light do we want it to go? We'll see. If it gets too light, we'll just knock it back down again. And this is the ivory with some of the ProAcryl yellow. Now, okay, yep, there's another spike over here. Don't want to forget that. So I basically was trying to use the miniature itself as some measure of inspiration for the design. Now, let's go back to our, maybe it's, yeah, let's mess around with our skin tones here, see if we cannot work in something more interesting. There's some of that Vulpus pink that we haven't really messed around with since the beginning. Gonna water that down. Now I'm holding it at it's gonna be an awkward angle for me. But what I would like to do is, that's it, just a little more. I want it to be blood red in comparison to things. But what I want to do is take this. So that's a little different temperature than that other magenta. It's also a little more intense. That's what I'm looking for here. But it's also, now it's a little more like the Reaper clear and liner paints. And now I can do, geez, what would you call it? Well, let's say if it's regular skin tone, as I make the invisible air quotes, where that would be green. Yeah, so I just added a little bit of the magenta in the skin tones, and now there's a little more flash of variety to it. Same thing here. But I'm also, at the same time, going to think about doing maybe some of the spots again here. Like so. Now we've got the little sort of gill markings there. Don't want to cross paths with those too much. Might be, the design would end up being confusing. I had to deal with the same thing on this piece of cloth over here, that potentially the design, because it hits a fold in a weird place, the design doesn't really register as what I want it to be. And now we're just doing a little bit of a glaze of purple in there, even here. I'm going to see what I can do right in here. Just get a little, that's it, okay. That's helpful. Got some of my lighter color here again for the eye. Hope you can see it. Oh, let's see, Fruity Toots, it's so annoying when you're in the middle of a project and boxes of mini look at you and plead to open them. Okay, so you do and have 1,000 projects. Well, let's see. How many boxes showed up today? I believe, well, 2 boxes were delivered, but in those boxes was 5 boxes of additional things. Now, they're not all for now. Some of those things are months from now, potentially. Projects that I just, well, it was easier to have the figures now and then work with them just over the course of time, because sometimes just a project will change. There's other things that are very much for the here and now, but there's been a ton of boxes just arriving almost every day, especially now that we're back from the conventions. And that's not unusual. Well, like the Sauron figure that showed up today, well, that was obviously that was another kind donation by one of the patrons. Much appreciated. And that's going to be sort of a, well, hopefully a road to the Golden Demons kind of thing. I hoping, I don't know, maybe that's my diorama or something, my diorama entry. So that would give me another potential Lord of the Rings entry that I can do. Now we're back here. Huh, you mean yesterday? Yeah, well, was it tomorrow is today? Although there are now, Amazon just keeps leaving it very nebulous as to if it's coming today, tomorrow, the next day. But some of the, I think there's 3 more Ossiarch boxes coming. Then that's not all of the Ossiarchs either. That doesn't include the big terrain piece. There's some of the spell effects. The guy that's on sort of the bone howdah, who's kind of riding around in the little bone rickshaw type thing. Yeah, I don't have that either. I could only get so many things to start with. But the Ossiarch stuff, like the Caractos or whatever he is, that's going to be a bunch of episodes. That one could be 6 episodes long. That might just be that's practically an army painting series by itself. So yeah, that one's going to be a long one. Yeah, we're just going to throw some. This is going to be a little different shade of purple here. So we got this is the clear purple. No, sorry, transparent purple mixed with the ivory. It's a little different shade. Little different shade, and now we'll drop some of that into this more of a shadow area type thing, and then we're going to try and see other places where we can put this color. Oh, like here, and even here. Let's see, in Tutti Fruits, and he has Metal Thousand Suns. Oh, yeah, Waleed has now tempted me with the new Plastic Thousand Suns. Bolt Action and Batman. Yeah, Marvel Crisis Protocol. That's the other thing that I gotta paint. I've got Cruel Seas ships that I'm working on. So there is plenty of stuff here that's got to be painted. Now let's even get a little bit of the magenta color into the, well, we'll just keep calling the tentacle here. Here's some down here too. So see, it goes from a blue to a sky blue, almost to a teal green and then into, well, basically a sort of a purple color here, or a magenta. And always trying to find some variation in these things. I'm going to see if I can't go a touch lighter on our skin colors here. Can we do it? I think we can. And if I pause, sometimes it's either making sure that it's on screen for you guys, or just looking over to see if there's been another question asked or anything along those lines. And I guess, geez, I should mention that this is a creature caster figure. And speaking of which, I'm just gonna, while I grab a quick little drink over here. So this is the other. There. Now you can get a feel. I'm just gonna scroll through some of these pictures here. And this is another. This was part of the Patreon series here. So the Lady of Anguish with the butterfly wings. You can see the ProAcryls in good use there. And there she is. Lots of, well, jade definitely was a big part of that one. And we did stuff with the green stuff world, leaf cutters and such. We did the freehand designs on the wings and everything. That was a really fun one right there. That was a 3-episode series, and I've got another one that's starting up here that's involving some. It's basically a fire demon, so that's going to be really fun. Definitely fun. So see, yeah, let's lighten up our blue here on the hand. Maybe a touch of the purple in there so it doesn't end up too blue. Sort of reminds me of what I did on my skinks there. Let's see if we can't get a little dark in there and maybe get a little blue in the skin here. Yeah, just needed that. Not quite sure if it shows up or not, but let's get some of that here too. Yeah, it's probably covered up, unfortunately, by the banner pole. But it's there. Trust me, it's there. Let's get some more of this lighter blue. More parts of the tentacle here. Let me see if I can't go into my Leviathan blue here and see if we can do this eye here so that you can actually see it. Just gonna make sure I don't have any weird little things hanging off the end of the brush. And there we go. And I'm gonna, now that I've done that, let's go with this. The original ProAcryl purple there. Aha, that's good. And now let's see if we can't go one level lighter right there. That's good. And now this is our regular skin tone here. I need to go upper lip like that. Very helpful. And then I think, yeah, the neck going into the shoulder. Let's use this. Hopefully that's not too watered down. Looking to do the lower lip here. That's good. And I'm throwing just a couple of dots of pink on this here. Throwing that in. I want that blue there. Gee whiz, I almost wiped that out. That wouldn't have been very helpful. Let's go a touch darker. Yeah. So this is most of my faded ultramarine blue has been used up. I just gotta connect the midtones here. And I think we've done it. Yep. There's also a little bit of dust or here, something on that. Oh heck, I'm gonna actually see if I can't get a little bit of this blue here. I gotta get it right there. There's one. There we go. There's the rest of it. And I have to think just how light do I go with this blue on the fingers if that's supposed to be a dark. Yeah, so this is the Leviathan blue. I'll use the contrast medium to thin it down too. And go over the hand again. And now see a nice little glaze in there, makes that dark. We're going to do the same thing here. Yeah, that's nice. Let's do some more of these Leviathan blue glazes in a few select spots here, like there. Oh yeah, that's good, because that starts to tone some things down, tie some things together. Oh, and I'll send you a photo via Instagram so you can see some of the Lord of the Rings boxes. Huh. Well, if anybody has a spare Easterling War Priest on horse that they want to donate to the cause, I'll take one of those because I can't find one anywhere. I'll definitely appreciate one of those. Oh, and the liner brush you're using another. Oh, this one here, this is there on camera now. So Winsor Newton, it's the Cotman series, so essentially it's a synthetic version of, you got your Winsor Newton series 7s. Well, this is the cheaper version of that. I've got series 7s. I just sort of forgot to even grab one. I was just busily painting away here, and the craft brush here, this is just another sort of Hobby Lobby brush right here. Nothing special. Probably about 27 cents max, if it's even that much. Let's see, we've got a little bit of a lighter color again here. Here, we had done those little sort of swirly things on the banners of Freehand. Let's start to play with those a little more too while we're at it here. So we can refine these a little more. We can bring out some, hide others. And as always, I can also go back in and do some glazes over the top of this to knock those back down again if they seem a little too bright. Especially where we're in a fold or whatever. Here, let's bring up this one here, especially this one. And you see, at this point now we can, it's less frenetic. We start to focus in on the much smaller little details because we've done all of the major stuff. So now we can maybe start to focus on these finer things. Can lighten this up a bit more. And I always have that option of just knocking it back down again. That's always there. Now, like I said, and here, this you can't even see what I would try and paint in there. So I'm not even going to mess around with that because you can't see it. But you can certainly see this, so we'll work back over here. And there's these crazy, what just all I can figure is sort of like a gill thing that's sculpted in there. So yeah, so that's, I'm glad actually it's good that we did go, see, darker on this hand over here, because now that really does bring out some of the gold there. Now we've got to do something on that pole. Can't just be that value. That's just not, that's no good. We have to do something on that. It's absolutely flat where we have just lots of shading all around it. And take some of the ochre in there. Don't want it to end up looking too much like the gold there, so we'll only go so light with it. I think I'll avoid putting greens on here because that's another thing we did on our golds, and we'll lose our separation that way. Because this is another thing, the pole here just hadn't been touched at all since the original glazes went in. Aha, there's some of that skin tone. We'll mess with that. What's now? Do I put, what would you say, wood texture on there? Maybe, maybe not. Let's see, even just that little bit there, that gave it some texture. And while I've got this, maybe I'll throw some of it on this side of the claw here. There's just so much going on. I want to make that more interesting. No, I don't want to use the ochre there. Let's keep that more essentially more like a skin tone or a flesh tone. Lighten up these parts, and then I may go back in a couple of more times. Maybe a snakebite leather glaze, maybe a wildwood mixed with some green glaze. Little subtle tints. It's not so much necessarily darkening things, but just a tint of something. I try to get people to think of glazes more broadly instead of just, well, you're going to darken it down, right, with a glaze. Well, A glaze can do a whole bunch more than just make something darker. It can tint something green. Now, I guess when you get into the vehicle painting realm, people think of it as a filter, and that's basically what you're doing. It's a tint. I'll retweet as what else are you looking for? Lord of the Rings. Well, let's see. For as far as the Easterling goes, the other thing I was going to try and convert was a Black Dragon Knight. I think, yeah, the black. No, just the Black Dragon. He's got the kind of hand and a half blade, and that's another important one. I know for Harad, geez, I don't know if I'll ever find the camels, and I forget what those are called, but yeah, I haven't even had the heart to start searching for those things because I'm sure if I do find them at all, they will be of a pricey nature. And then the other thing too is I have some Candish forces here. I was basically going to convert some Tomb King's chariots again to function as my. Here, I just got a little hair on. There we go. That's better. That the Easterlings there. It's a lot of the mounted heroes that are missing, and well, eventually we're going to be working our way through all of the different Lord of the Rings armies. More Rohan, my Galadrim elves. I'm going to have to start rebuilding them. Yeah, at a certain point, I had to basically, well, you do things to survive. I had to sell off virtually all my Lord of the Rings stuff, and I'm slowly trying to get that stuff back. But now, knowing some of the thing and the new techniques, the new materials, the oils, like the Morgul Knights that I did in oils, those were a blast. I definitely want to try I've got I think it was the Witch King, right? I guess I've got him on a Fell Beast, and I think that is going to be a very fun oil painting exercise. Oh, Mahood Warriors. Oh, well, very well, thank you very much. Those would be pretty darn interesting. Because I've got the the regular cavalry, I've got the infantry, and I still have, and this is from when they first came out, I actually still have a Mumak, and he's most definitely going to be painted in oils. What was it, Athelion, right? Is that where they did where they tried to, what would you say, not hijack, but ambush the Easterlings and such? Alright, so I've got that's basically a Cassandora yellow. Mixing that in with my whites there. Let's see, what are the other things that oh yeah, the Dol Amroth, that's it. Now I can get the plastic, I think there's the plastic cavalry for Dol Amroth, right? That's still available now. I don't know if there's foot troops, though. Those are still the old metal ones, probably. I forget those. Well, freehand. Uh, Doing all the different swan designs on those horse blankets and stuff. They have sort of a really sorry looking swan sculpted into the regular, the sculpts themselves. Might even just file that stuff off so that I can put my own on there. Because, yeah, that was sometimes I just wish that things, and I understand why they're sculpted in, because it makes it easier for folks that don't want to do freehand. But for those of us that would rather do the freehand, those things just kind of get in the way. And that texture is already sculpted in. Nope, yeah, Tutti Fruits has to get going now, going out, message you on Instagram and work it out. Well, that's much appreciated. It's the quest for Middle Earth, that's for sure. So I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks again for joining. Oh, and engineered to draw, says Rohan and Elves. Yeah, I already started the infantry. I have actually several of the cavalry assembled. So I'll be doing a series on the cavalry. I've got the new AON. Where is she? Oh, I can't quite reach that from here. But I also have the new and then the old version of Theoden on Snowmane. I believe that was his horse. I think I have Aomir. I believe so. And, well, some of those will be live sessions. Whatever I can squeeze in. And heck, if it were up to me, I would do these every single day. But I can only do these if let's say I'm uploading another video to YouTube. Well, bandwidth-wise, live sessions and uploading, they don't play together too well. So yeah, I definitely would do these all the time if I could, because it's way more fun than me just sort of talking to myself. That's for sure. Let's see what we can do. Here we go. Let's try and get a little more resolution on our design here. See if I can find a couple of more lights on my, yeah, little touches of freehand here. See what we're doing? Ever so slight, not everywhere. Essentially, like in a line that follows the curvature of the cloth. Can you see what I'm doing right there? And I apologize if I'm not making a whole lot of sense as I do word salad because of, well, fatigue. It has been another very long day. Another reason why company is helpful. Now, just trying to get the Sculpey firm. Yeah, that's, well, and like I always say with the baking of the Sculpey, well, obviously on a ceramic tile, for one thing, but try the different shelves in your oven because the sweet spot, every oven is different. And the other thing, too, you can use, what the heck are those? The little electric, the toaster ovens. Yeah, you can use those too. Now look at this. We're taking the purple and the blue, mixing those together. It's a whole different color here. Speaking of different colors, I'm going to make my homemade jade part of the mix here somewhere. Oh, heck, maybe even on my freehand here. Oh, yeah, let's do that. Let's give this thing some glowing eyes here or something, maybe. That's a little more interesting than just hollow sockets. That's for sure. All right. Well, now it is almost 5 o'clock in the morning. And I will just have to call this an evening, a morning, an afternoon. It's all of those things to somebody somewhere. So here, let's... Well, thanks again for Fruity Toots and Engineered to Draw. And we had a Gary in here. We had Trevor and Waleed. Thanks again for, well, the game, the food, Bethany, Evil Elvis. And let's see, we also had Gary. We had Aviad and Oliver. Oh, and Lehman Russ too. And Aerox Minis. Oh, and there's Gary and Reme. Oh, and Will joined in early. So I want to say thanks again, everybody. And I'll catch you again on the next episode. I'll see you next time.